In this video, I'm going to explain a little bit of how to start out the graphic translation assignment and some techniques that can help you as you work through the abstraction and the simplification process. So the first step really is to decide what you want your subject matter to be. What will your object be that you're going to translate? So as I said, I put very few restrictions on what it can be. I recommend not doing a person. That can be really challenging. I'd also watch the complexity of the thing that you are trying to tackle, and also think about how recognizable it is. If you choose something very unusual or hard to identify, that might not end up helping you in the long run. So I've selected a bee. So I started this by looking up bee in Google Images. Obviously I cannot photograph a bee, or I'm not going to try to, so I'm going to just go ahead and look at the things that pop up. There's all different kinds of positions, so I'm starting to look at, what kind of an angle might I want to look at or use for this assignment. I could also potentially try a few of these and go through the techniques that I'm going to show and then make a judgment call as I'm working through it. I'm thinking I want to avoid things like this, like difficult angles. More of these profile shots will probably be easier. It also, again, will probably be more of the position that will help people identify that this is a bee. I'm already seeing some illustrations and some simplification abstractions, but I want to avoid using those as source material. But it's always neat to see what's out there and potentially how this could be approached. So I'm going to go ahead and go with this image. I like that it's a profile or it's a top-down shot. I can see all the parts of the bee. I think that's going to make it easy to identify and nice to work with. So the next step really is to save this image to my desktop, and then I'm going to open it up in Photoshop. So now I have this open in Photoshop, and now I can manipulate this image and start trying some things out that might help me go through the abstraction and simplification process. The first thing is that I can come up here and I can go to Adjustments, Threshold, and I can slide this slider back and forth, and you'll see that this allows me to see a little bit of the detail of the image. It helps me establish where the shadows are, the dark and the light. If I go all the way to the right, it almost helps create a silhouette of this image for me, which could be really useful if I'm going for some kind of an outline. But again, this really helps you see the parts of the image that are really important, or the dark portions where there are shadows and the light portions, and this really can inform what you do as you work towards this translation. Another thing you can do is come into Adjustments again, Image, Adjustments, and go to Posterize. And this is a technique that breaks the photo down into a certain number of levels. So, for example, I can go to 2 levels, and I can start seeing where things break down and where spaces lie. And sometimes this can be helpful too, to see where there should be divisions, not necessarily for how you would color this, but how you should layer shapes or where you should break shapes up. Another thing that could be useful is to come into mode, grayscale, discarding the color, and then you can come into adjustments into the levels, and you can move these levels around, and you can start seeing again more detail of where the shadows are or where the lights and darks are. You can also potentially come in here and create a silhouette of some kind. It's also interesting to grayscale and then go through the posterize functions, because you'll get a more of a grayscale approach, which can be really useful, maybe more useful for what we're trying to do for this assignment. And then what you can do with any of these, if you like them, when you have it where you want it, is go ahead and go to File, Save As. And that way you can create and save all of your source material for the final assignment that you'll turn in. Because you'll want to show some of that source material in your document of how you got through this process. You could also print any of these images and then use them as a place to trace or copy as you work through creating your final graphic translation. So those are some tips and some techniques that hopefully will help you. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email your instructor.